Hey everyone, welcome back to Business Shenanigans. I'm Trent May from May Financial. I'm live here from the wood panel jungle you can probably see behind me, called my office. With me, as always, Mahmoud Boutam from Sprout Digital. He's your Moroccan superhero in the upper right there. And with us, our very, very special guest, Drew Hastings. Drew, how are you?
Good, thank you, gentlemen. It's great to be here. This is the first interview I've actually done in a while. So, hello, Trent. Hello, Mahmoud.
Hello, sir.
We are honored to have you here on our show. We're going to be talking some economic development today, and people might be wondering, why are we bringing on Drew Hastings to talk about economic development? Well, let's go over a little bit of your background. You've had to manage finances as a startup comedian on the road, probably sleeping, in dirty hotel after dirty hotel just so you can make a profit. You started a farm and you became the mayor of Hillsborough and turned things around there. So you might have some insight into what it takes. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's start with a tweet here that you sent out. We're celebrating Labor Day, a holiday that honors American workers at a time where there's millions of jobs available and no one wants to work. So let's expand on that. What's going on right now in our economy?
Well, look, I'm not an economist, but I think most people can look around and talk to their neighbors and see the signs uptown and the signs out at the strip malls, hiring and everywhere else. And just, having conversations with people and realize that the government, the United States government, has given away so much money in the last year and a half, that the average American is spoiled and doesn't want to go back to work. I mean, they just don't. Now, that being said, I think there are plenty of people that want to work. But the reason we have these figures, what was the last figure that came out last week? They were expecting 700,000 jobs maybe to be filled, and it was actually 230,000. There's no incentive for people to go back to work. But this also isn't an absolutely new thing, you guys. I mean, I can remember being on stage 10, 15 years ago and talking about the plight of the American work ethic. And I used to do I don't remember how it goes now, but I used to talk about serial killers. I made the analogy about serial killers. And I said, and I would ask the audience, I would say, well, look at serial killers. Where do they traditionally, when you read the news articles, where do they traditionally bury their victims? And somebody in the audience would invariably say, well, in a shallow grave. Exactly. That's why they get caught. They don't even want to do that job right. I don't know about you, but if I killed half a dozen people, I would be doing a little more than kicking some dead leaves off the ground to cover my tracks. I'd be digging till I hit archaeological ruins. So, and I was making fun, but I was talking about a very serious thing. And this goes back at least 15 or 20 years that I was doing this material, that I can remember talking about how, Obama has changed. He has recategorized scratching instant lottery tickets to put it under the category of skilled labor to get the numbers up. We've had a problem with work ethic for a long time.
Yeah, I can see the
Here's
same
what
thing.
I want to. Sorry, go ahead, Mahmoud.
I can see the same thing. I work with contractors a lot, and they've been struggling. Right after COVID hit, and even worse after the whole, just like what you explained, Drew, like the government, the help and everything, and people started pulling out, taking vacations and all that. With that said, just like you said, there are people that, they're still hunting. They want to work. They're hungry and everything. But the industry, the contractor industry, definitely got impacted by having so much demand on their skill, but not enough talent to hire, not enough help.
And you could also, Mahmoud, go back to saying, that's been a mistake we've made. And that conversation just started getting going in the last couple of years about that we send way too many kids to college, and we don't send kids, we don't value trades and tech schools. Mm-hmm. And had we had people trained in those areas, maybe we wouldn't have quite this problem. I can't tell you how many HVAC business owners I know, plumbers I know, electricians I know. They can't find anybody to work. And not only that, there's very few people that are qualified as apprentices now.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. There's a heavy emphasis on degrees, and the heavy emphasis on the know, but not so much the know-how, not so much the trades and
exactly.
the skills.
Yeah, good point.
Well, let me ask you this about your tweet, because I think there's always the argument that you made about there's all these jobs and no one wants to work. And the first thing someone always says in response to that comment, and someone replied this to you, pay them and they will come. What's your response to that?
Well, my response to that is, you can raise the minimum wage all you want. You can raise the minimum wage, the talk now is to $15. But how about instead you just raise your child to be worth more than a minimum wage? That would be my answer.
And a thought I have too is, I think it's a short-sighted response to say pay them and they will come. Mahmoud runs Sprout Digital. I'm sure Mahmoud would love to pay his employees through the moon. We have, a really successful, or I don't know their books. I don't know that they're successful, but there's a delicious restaurant in town, I'll say, called the Merchant House, who, probably has the best food in town.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would love to pay their people more. But here's the thing that happens. There's a snowball effect. And I don't think people realize it. Once you start paying people more, all the costs go up. The Merchant House or Mahmoud isn't going to magically make more profit because he pays his employees more. That money has to come from somewhere. And if he's not making a profit, he's not staying in business. So all of a sudden, when the quarter pounder goes up in price, everything's getting more expensive. The raise never actually occurred. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's right. Because it all rolls downhill. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right, so tell us a bit about, I would love to know, if it's okay, about the start. We talked about, you happen to probably sleep in hotels, like dirty hotels, things like that. What was it like? I strongly wish there was a personal finance class taught in high schools. I think people need to learn how to budget, how to save. What was it like learning how to go on the road, have to save money? You have to have money to eat. What was it like for you starting out?
Well, I was a little more experienced, a little more astute, if you will, than the average comedian that starts out. The average comedian that starts out is usually 19, 20, 21. I did not start stand-up comedy till I was 32. And by the time I was 32, and believe me, I didn't come from any money. I was raised by a single mom. But I started, I've always been self-employed, and I started my first business when I was about 22 or 3, I guess. and it was a small warehousing trucking business. And so I learned that about paying bills and trying to juggle your revenue and expenses from an early age, So by the time I went to the road for me, the economics of it was a piece of cake. Oh, I'm going to get paid X amount by somebody, an agreed amount. They're going to pay for my accommodations, which is generally the case. I'm going to pay for my food, gas, travel expenses. And whatever's left over, I can put away or blow it. And so that's what I did. I mean, my first few years, I didn't really save money per se. I didn't really start saving money until I was about 50.
Okay.
And I liken it, though, to, it goes back, and it's in my memoir. It's the opening chapter in my book that's coming out around this Christmas. My first chapter is called Social Insecurity. And that chapter is a story, it's an incident about when I opened my Social Security statement that you get every year or two. And I usually would never open them. And I open it up, and it would give a explanation of how much money you've made your entire life and how much you're going to get when you retire. And I'll never forget, I looked at it, and it said, if you retire now, you are eligible to get $852 a month. And my initial response was, wow, I'm going to get $852 a month. Wow, for nothing. And my second thought was, $852 a month? Who the hell can live on that? And there was a sentence, and it's probably in italics, in the Social Security statement that says, in effect, if not verbatim, Social Security was never intended to be your sole source of income in retirement. And I remember thinking, that's awfully bold. You don't usually see opinions by the federal government, but they obviously gave one there. And I remember thinking, I better get my act together. And it's kind of like looking in the mirror. I used to smoke, and it's like looking in the mirror and going, boy, my teeth are a little dingy. Boy, I've got a big date. I better squirt a whole tube of this tooth whitener in my mouth and scrub my teeth extra hard and get caught up and whiten my teeth all at once. Well, that doesn't happen. It's a process. And that's the same way I would describe, in a weird way, analogy, that's the same way I would describe towards savings. You don't want to wait till the last minute and start putting it together.
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah.
it's a great analogy. It's like a long-term thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. So you started like basically you were starting businesses since you were in your early 20s. When did the stand-up comedy jump into the mix?
Well,
what pushed you down that path?
What?
And what pushed you down that path? What made you make that leap? Also, as a follow-up.
I owned my own business, and I was essentially in the warehousing trucking business. I was kind of in what is now called the commercial record storage business, where you store files and records for people. And I did confidential document shredding. I was one of the first guys in that business. And I was always grossly undercapitalized. And more and more in the mid 80s, more and more regulations were coming in. OSHA was telling me how far back from the dock I had to store this. You have to paint lines on the warehouse floor to indicate the safe area of this. You cannot stack this stuff more than 3 pallets high to do this. And I really resented all of the government intrusion into my business, whether it was local, state, or federal. And it was usually all three. Because I was like, where the hell were you people when I was sleeping on the floor of my office and getting up at 7 in the morning and driving a forklift and unloading boxcars and semi trucks, and then at 11 o'clock washing my face and putting on a suit and going out and calling on customers and trying to wear that hat and call on customers, then come back in the afternoon and unload boxes. And I was like, well, where were they for all this? All they care about is making burdensome requirements of me. So I was getting fed up with that. And there was a point I had done stand-up in college a little bit, just as like a hobby. But I forgot about it because, hey, I've got to go get a real job and make a living. And so this was about 7 years later. I ran into a guy that I had done stand-up with, just, as a hobby. And I said, how are you? What are you doing? He goes, oh my gosh, there's a comedy boom. And I'm supporting myself at stand-up comedy. I said, what? He goes, yeah, look. And he showed me a little ad in the paper where the comedy club and he was appearing. And I'm like, he goes, yeah, I'm a middle act, feature act, and I'm making $500 a week. I'm like, you're making $500 a week standing on stage being funny? And he was like, yeah. And he said, I can give you some names if you want, bookers that hire. I said, okay. Well, I'm like, well, I'm funnier than this guy ever was. My gosh, I could do this. So I had a little bit of money saved up. So I sold my business. I went into stand-up comedy, and I never looked back. I started out as an MC, an opening act, which paid about $250, $300 a week. And I did that for a year and a half. And then I got up to a feature act, which paid around $450 to $600 a week. And I did that for 2 years, maybe 3. And by then I had run out of my savings, and it was okay because I was now supporting myself. And then I finally became a headliner, but I was a no-name headliner, meaning I was getting the minimum. I was getting about $1,000, $1,200 a week to headline because I wasn't known. I wasn't a draw. But that was plenty of money to me. I was like, wow, I'm making all this money. So that's how that happened. That's how that came about. And then I started on the road. And because I'm from the Midwest, and the great majority of road work during the comedy boom and all the comedy clubs was in the Midwest, I toured the Midwest from Pennsylvania to Nebraska, down to maybe Kansas City, Missouri, down into Tennessee. And believe me, that's plenty of states all through there to do tons of work. And I worked about 50 weeks a year, and I did that for a long time. And that, I'm going to flash forward, is what led into my philosophy of economic development when I eventually ran for mayor 25 years later. And that is, when I ran for mayor, I looked around our town, Hillsborough, which was tired, dilapidated, beat up. Its uptown was all but deserted, empty stores everywhere. And the stores that were there were tattoo parlors and cigarettes and lottery tickets. So when I started talking about economic development, when I was running for mayor, I told people, and this is true, I said, look, I was on the road for 20 years, 25 years in the Midwest. And I went through every small town in the Midwest 8 times, the same town. Dubuque, Iowa, Greenville, Ohio, Xenia, Ohio, Keokuk, Iowa, Peoria, Illinois. It didn't matter where. And I noticed all these towns had the same problem. They all were dying. The big box stores had moved out to the outskirts. That killed the traditional stores that were uptown. Then the city fathers started cutting the heads off the parking meters and removing the parking meters uptown because nobody was about to pay for parking in a small town anymore, much less, So that's what happened. And the only very few towns that actually had turned themselves around were either towns that put casinos in their city or towns that branded themselves in a very specific way, like with antiques or heritage, and they branded themselves to attract tourism. And so, and there's long been an exodus from small towns. Young people have always left small towns. They've always left small towns to go to find their, see the world and to find their way. And they go to New York or they go to Columbus or Dayton or Cincinnati or whatever. And I said, the problem is young people are leaving and they don't come back until they're old enough to put their parents in assisted living. That's when they come back. They come back when they're 55 to take care of their elderly parents. And I said, the name of the game is to create a town where the young people are coming back when they're 27, 28, because, hey, I want to start a family. And you know what? Greenville, Ohio is a good place to go back to. And that was my economic development kind of overall philosophy. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that.
You want those active people in the prime of their life to be in the town, not when they're already settled and they have careers outside and they're just coming in to take care of their parents and stuff. You want them while they're active.
Yeah. And I think now in a weird way, it's actually small towns have an opportunity because people are looking to get out of the cities, whether it's because of Antifa type crime, whether it's just urban crime in general that's in most cities, because of crime and kind of upheaval. And the fact that COVID has created a situation where a lot of people can now legitimately work remotely. If I were mayor of a small town now, I would be out there, come to Hillsborough, Ohio, come to Greenville, Ohio, or Logan, Ohio, because people are friendly here. You can still leave your house for the most part unlocked at night. The rents are far cheaper. The cost of living is less, and it's a great place to raise your kids. And I would really tout that because people are looking for a reason. I mean, you're already seeing the numbers that people are wanting to move out of cities, and they're doing it. But I'd give them a reason to want to come to your town, because that's the only thing. Getting taxable income, taxable citizens, is the only thing that's going to build your tax base.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've seen that, exactly what you're talking about in Greenville, where you might meet someone new. It's like, oh yeah, I work in Dayton, but maybe I did not want to raise my kids there. Maybe their job. Yeah, maybe their job is in Dayton, but they may not necessarily want to live there.
That's right.
Yeah,
Mahmoud moved here all the way from Morocco to get away.
That's right.
His kids here.
Yeah, that's how far I want to
I doubt that. You've probably been here since you were a kid, huh?
The hustle and bustle of Casablanca. So.
No, I stayed here after college. I came here for college and then I stayed. But
you came to the U.S. for college?
Oh yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
UK, Kentucky, Lexington.
Oh yeah, good school.
Yeah. It is a great school. Yeah, I love.
So how the heck did you end up there in where is it, New Bremen?
Yeah, New Bremen. Yeah. So I finished school in Kentucky and then got engaged and married and then moved to.
I was
going
to say something like that. You don't end up in a place like that unless it's because of a girl.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was because of a girl. Yeah. And then once we started having kids, then we realized, okay, we need to get out of the city. Yeah. And New Bremen's close enough to family here and the in-laws and everything, free babysitting. So we decided, hey, New Bremen's the
cool. Well, good.
Yeah.
Gotta ask you about one thing though.
Kids.
Yeah. So you had all this tight government regulation at your job.
Yeah.
You went to stand up, got a bit more freedom, decided to leave California, wanted to come back to Ohio, found Hillsboro somehow. I'm guessing that's a whole different conversation. But
yeah.
You found Hillsboro.
Well, I knew I wanted to get out of LA. I'd been there 13 years. And I knew I wanted to come back to the Midwest, and I wanted to come back to Ohio because this is where I'm from. But I wanted to do something to jumpstart me creatively, something I'd never done before. And I got it in my head. I said, rural. I've never lived rural in my entire life. I lived in New York, San Francisco, LA. And so I drove a U-Haul truck from LA back to Cincinnati. On the outer belt, I found one of those U-Store at U-Lockets and put all my furniture and stuff in a U-Store. Then proceeded to drive around southern Ohio all summer, just looking for a place. And I stay here for a while and kind of drive around, looking around. I was down in it's really heavy, almost like logging forests down in southeastern Ohio, around Ohio University, Logan. My only criteria was that I'd be no more than an hour and a half from an airport, so I could fly out and do gigs. So I was all over the place. And one day I happened to pull into Hillsboro, and I pulled into a diner, and I'm reading the newspaper, and there was a farm for sale. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, I think I could afford that. And I came out and looked at it, and I bought it sight unseen. I'm pretty much sight unseen. I came out. I mean, I damn sure didn't know anything about land. I had no idea if the soil was fertile or not. And I'll never forget the old timers around here said, oh, son, you way overpaid. $3,000 an acre. Oh, you're crazy. And, but you know what? My house is up on a hill. I have a view that goes out forever. One of the highest points in the county, a view to die for. There's always a breeze up here, woods behind me. By the way, that farm it just showed and that barn was not mine. That's what we call a stunt farm. There's no part of my farm that's that flat. That was taken at an ag gig, actually somewhere up around Columbus, somewhere around Circleville or something. That was up there. That was taken. I have plenty of pictures of my farm, and I'm proud to show, but that isn't one of them. And so anyway, that's how I ended up here. Yeah. And then I knew nothing. And so I've always been a very curious person, and I'm an entrepreneur. And the best way to find out about anything, if you're young and you want to start a business, and young guys know what I'm talking about, if they're trying to start a business or get into something, you just ask a million questions. And it's so true. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And I would pester all the old farmers around here, because most farmers are old. I mean, they're older. I mean, there's not a lot of young guys in the game. That's the problem with farming. So I would go around and pester them. Why do you do that way? How come you have that kind of fencing? How did you lose your 2 fingers? I don't want to lose my fingers. And they wouldn't take offense, and they would tell you, how come you limp like that? Well, don't ever turn your back on a bull. Okay. Don't ever mess around. I learned really early on about PTOs and farm equipment. Don't ever monkey around. Don't, what to wear, not to wear around farm equipment. And I just took it all in. And then when I kind of thought I knew enough to be dangerous, I bought a few cows, and then I finally ended up with a small cow-calf operation for beef cattle.
Nice.
So how was the government regulation going into farming? Or was there a lot of red tape that you have to cut through to enter
for farming?
Arena? Yeah.
No.
No.
Well, first of all, I don't want to give anything away, but down here in Southern Ohio, you're kind of off the beaten track. I mean, I don't know about up where you are, but you're not that far. You're maybe an hour and a half from me. I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, there's the EPA. And don't even get started about the EPA. I don't care about the EPA at all. I remember going to a seminar once where they talked about bugs and plants and stuff. And they were talking about invasive species that farmers have to deal with. And the teacher asked, he said, what is the most invasive species you can get on your farm? And I said, the federal government. And that's true. And I think most farmers would probably agree and tell you the EPA is probably the worst. But there aren't really, when you have a cow-calf operation like mine, a small thing, and a dozen head of cattle, you're kind of under the radar. Nobody's really. Now, if I was slaughtering my own cattle and I was selling beef out of my barn, yeah, I would have issues. I'd have the state to deal with, the county, but I don't do any of that.
Okay.
What did you realize?
Get them fat. I get them fat. I send them off to be sold or bred. Really raising beef cattle, it's like sex trafficking for livestock. You have female cattle, you bring a bull in, he does the female cattle, they get pregnant, they have offspring, and you start over again.
Nice. Are there any things that changed about you when you hopped on this farming thing? Like anything that you think differently about? Anything that you changed your mind about?
Yeah,
I'm sure you have a lot more respect for farmers
part of the
now
reason
that you have
I
a
ran
farm.
for mayor was I got a sense of community. I had never had no idea what a sense of community was. You guys have spent time in a small town, and you, Trent, have grown up in one. You take a lot of it for granted. I mean, picture a guy who lives in a city. Cities, and Mahmoud probably knows this. You lived in big city, Casablanca? Okay.
Yeah, I lived in Casablanca for a few
Big
years.
cities, they're very anonymous. They're very anonymous. In LA, if I lived in a big apartment building, if somebody died, the talk was down by the mailbox, oh, did you hear that the old lady who lived up on 6 died? I probably didn't even know her name. Just, the old lady who lived up on 6. Remember the nice old lady? She died. Oh, hey, do you remember that hippie guy that lived down the hall? Yeah, he died. Got in a car wreck. Well, that's life in a big city. And you don't really have a sense of community. You don't care about your neighbor so much. If you see a 10-year-old kid walking down the sidewalk smoking a cigarette, you know what? It's not any of my business. When I moved here, after I'd been here a few years, it became personal. First of all, death, which was very alien concept to me, was much more an accepted part of life, I found, in a rural area or small town. I wasn't used to being around it. And when somebody would pass, it was no longer the old lady that lives up on the 6th floor. It was like, well, that was Mrs. Wilkin. Mm-hmm. And I know her son. He owns the tractor place uptown. Mm-hmm. And her grandkids, I see them over here at the playground. And I know there's a connection. I know these people. And it's the same. I'll never forget, I was down at a convenience store once and I saw some kids, about 12-year-olds, smoking. And your parents know you're smoking like that? And I would never have thought to do that when I lived in the city. Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
I got a sense of community. And then once I got a sense of community, I started caring. And then once I started caring, that's ultimately how I ran for mayor. Now, I never wanted really to be married. I was happily single most of my life. Didn't really want to be married. Definitely did not want children. And that all changed after I got here, because once I had a sense of community and was part of all this, I saw the value in family, which I hadn't really, not truly known before. So other than that, I have no opinion on the subject.
That's a great change. That's that you switched. Just the move to where you are right now, just switched your perception of, especially that. And I can relate to that, because when I lived in Casablanca, I didn't have 4 neighbors like now. I had 50. Yeah. So the scale is much bigger. So the interest obviously goes down. Like, yeah, well, she died, the lady or whatever. Right. On to the next one. What else is going on? Now it's like if someone dies in our community, it's like you keep talking about it over and over and over, and you're talking about it to different people because it's a small town.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's and they make a difference, because that person, everybody has seen that person 1,000 times in their life. They went to school with them, or that person taught their kids, or you see them at the grocery store. And, for gosh sakes, they were one of 6,000 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in the scope of when you live in a city of 6 million,
Right.
So, well, let's put a bow on this. I want to circle back here. We have a question. I kind of want to alter it a bit, but we started talking about economic development. Says, what value do you think the younger generation has that's not being fulfilled? And I think there's this perception right now with the younger generation, and I've seen some of it myself, even in Greenville. We were doing interviews last year, And there was definitely a difference between the younger interviewees and the older interviewees. There was the sense of almost entitlement where the older interviewees were almost just like, here's what I can bring to the table. A lot of the younger interviewees were like, what are you going to do for me? So kind of going off that, I mean, what are your thoughts here? What does the younger generation need really in order to help us turn this thing around? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I would say it's not. The first thing that comes to my mind, the younger generation needs to know hardship. They've never known hardship. You know, I have long thought, my mother used to tell me this. My mother, who grew up during the bombing of London in World War II, and you know, post-war England, which was horribly broke and depressed and in bad shape for years after the war. But my mom used to tell me, you know, people in America have no concept how good they have it. And all Americans should be forced at some point to go to another part of the world and see how the rest of the world lives. And Mahmoud, I'm sure, would agree with me on this. You go to other parts of the world and see how most of the rest of the world lives, you would come back here and kiss the ground when you got off the plane. Absolutely. Would you not, Mahmoud?
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gratitude. It fills you with gratitude.
People, we take it for granted when you sit on a toilet that there is nice soft paper next to you and that you can push a button and it all goes away. In huge parts of the world, that's a dream. They can't even imagine that. And so to go back to young people today being entitled, that's the problem. They have never known hardship. And they've never been through a depression. They've never been through a recession. They've been through a couple of minor hassles, you know, with the masks. That's nothing.
I agree.
It's really upsetting because they're going to be in for a rude awakening at some point because things always change, you know. And I mean, God forbid if we were to ever have a war on our own land, or some huge, I don't know what it would be, natural catastrophe. But, you know, I just think young people need to know they're not going to have an appreciation for what they have until they've done without. That's my take.
Mm-hmm. Perspective, yes. Every time I get out of the United States and I go to a different country, I regain my perspective again. I regain my gratitude. Like I have all the things I need here to run a business. There are places where it's the bureaucracy is so crippling that starting a business is a nightmare. Like there's no way, people just give up. So yeah, I totally agree. We need not just hardship, but also a little adversity. And I kind of experiment with that with my kids. Like I try to give them a little adversity. I give them their checklists on their on the fridge there. Like you got to do this and you got to do that. Like a little adversity throughout the day, so they're not just being given stuff. They're also contributing.
Right.
And when they go through that, and we go through like an hour of just clean up your toys and do this and make your bed and all that, they enjoy whatever family time comes after.
Yeah.
Like whether we do a movie or whatever, because it's fulfilling now. You feel fulfilled. You made your bed. You did all these things. There was a talk that I listened to, and this guy phrased it really well. He called it vitamin. He called it vitamin no. Your kids need vitamin no. Even if you have the resources and you have the means to buy them whatever they want and spoil them rotten, you gotta put some vitamin no in there. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, life is gonna crush them. You gotta get them ready for those no's that they're gonna hit in life.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't let you off of here without saying something about the book. I have you started posting on here, drewhastings.substack.com, little snippets that didn't make the book, which are highly entertaining. I can't wait to see what's actually in the book. You said holidays?
Yeah, should be around Christmas. The book just got finished. It's with my editor now. We'll go through months of spell checking and everything else, and then we're trying to find a publisher. The problem is, I'm on the conservative end of the spectrum, and the publishing industry is very liberal, and everything's polarizing nowadays. So it might be that I don't find a publisher, and if that's the case, then I have to self-publish. Thank God self-publishing is a lot more legitimate than it used to be, and there's a lot better options. And you actually, if you self-publish, you can do it in such a way that, your book is really indistinguishable from a published book, and you get to keep a lot more of the money, which is something to be said for that. So I'll be working on
that. If my wife was watching, Christmas just became easier for you. I want a copy of the book.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It changed a lot. The reason I'm doing a whole little series that I'm putting out on Substack, which you can subscribe to if you just go to that address up there. You can sign up. You can just subscribe for the emails. And I do podcasts. I record almost all of them. And then you can also read them if you just want to read them. And it's stuff that got cut from the book because the book changed over 4 or 5 years. What it started out, when the memoir started out, I was convinced it was that the book was called Sons of Single Mothers. And I was really going to talk about the memoir was going to move through my life and what it was like, not so much being raised by a single mother, but by not having a father and kind of having to fend for yourself. And the book is a lot about me moving through life and fending for myself and trying to figure life out. And it covers some of that, but it's not really about that. And so the book changed as it went on. It also got more serious. There's a lot of very funny parts in it, but it got more serious and philosophical in some respects. But I'm really proud of it, but it took a long time to write. It's probably 300 or so pages, the way it'll turn out. And it'll be out. It'll be out around Christmas. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Can't wait. Can't wait to read it. Drew, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. If you ever want a soapbox, just give us a ring and
thank you.
Feel free to jump on.
Thank you. You'll probably hear from me back when the book is ready to be marketed. I'll probably get back with you too in the next couple of months. Say, hey, here's where it's available. You can get the audiobook or this or that. And,
Oh, you doing audio?
Yeah, I'll definitely do an audiobook.
And I love that.
Are you reading it yourself with your own voice?
Oh yeah, I'll read it myself. More nice. People are going to audiobooks than reading almost. You? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I love it.
I'm blind as a bat. I can't read, so I gotta consume my books audio.
Yeah, I'll be doing that. In fact, I just got finished putting together a sound studio in a building I own uptown to record it in.
Nice. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love that
Looking
because I actually just listened to The Business of Living by a guy you may know called Jack Freeman.
That's what
And it's so your alter ego, I guess, but it's so cool to be able to listen to it in the author's voice and to be able to just play it in the car, play it while you're, cleaning around the house, whatever. You can have it in your ears.
Not very believable, I mean, he takes himself very seriously, and and there's a lot of truth to it,
Yeah. But The Business of Living by Jack Freeman. You can download
You
it.
can find that on
Audible.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Drew. Jump back on anytime.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Drew.
Great
Looking
talking.
forward to the book. Yeah.
Thank you.
Too,
We'll
buddy.
talk again soon.
All right, thank you.